Good evening all, and welcome. Abandoned places can sure be pretty creepy, and we're about to go exploring. So get comfortable, grab your flashlights, and let the darkness take control. I am part of an Urbex group, and we visited an abandoned facility. To get to this location, we hopped on a plane, drove 5 hours in a rental car, then inflated 2 kayaks and paddled across a lake, and then we walked for nearly an hour down some train tracks in the middle of the night until we reached the path that led us to our destination. We had to avoid security patrols, broken glass, barbed wire fences, and other dangers. This story starts like many great stories, with the sound of a cap being popped off an ice-cold beer. I handed my buddy the beer and sat down next to him on the couch. Buddy looks up from his laptop screen and asks, "You gonna make the call?" I say, "Yeah, bro. Let's find out where their place is." I click the button to invite our contact to the video call, and our contact appears on screen and greets us. After a conversation that lasted a few hours, my buddy and I had a map with a route drawn, the coordinates for Operation Pain in the Arse, and we had pages of notes of information regarding the history of said location, and the way we needed to travel to get there, what we needed to bring, and what lay in wait for us. We had to wait 3 months as we planned and prepared our adventure. I'd like to mention a few highlights though. The first notable thing is that Buddy rented us a car. It ended up being a compact hatchback, and to his surprise, it was stick, not automatic. After grinding first gear into the dust and stalling the engine a dozen times, I opted to take over the role of driver. He was pissed when he found out that I had no problem at all, and I just wanted to watch him get embarrassed. I also proceeded to get our death machine stuck in some mud near the lake. I guess my driving skills weren't as up to scratch as I thought, and I nearly lost my sleeping bag to the lake because it was not properly secured to my kayak. By the time we were on the kayaks, the sun had already set, causing us to walk down the train tracks in utter darkness. At one point I stopped to take a photo of the train tracks, and Buddy said, "Yeah man, if this were a movie, this is totally where we would die." To make it even scarier, we had to hide in some bushes next to the path that led to the facility because a security patrol car drove right by us but fortunately did not spot us. After completing our travel, we reached the main gate of our destination. We followed the fence down from the gate and found a hole that we were able to enter through. We were inside and we could hardly contain our excitement. Had it been daytime, we would have taken the drone out and used it to further map out the area and to explore. The facility was very large and had multiple floors. We were discussing where we could hide the deflated kayaks to provide us with more mobility when we saw a pair of flashlights heading in our direction. We moved fast and low and made it to the nearest wall and followed the wall in the opposite direction of the flashlights and found a point of entry. One floor above us had a broken window leading inside. The ladder leading up was blocked off, but we managed to climb it. I gave my buddy a boost so that he could take hold of the top plate of the barrier. He was able to pull himself up while holding onto the rungs of the ladder. He helped me pull up, and we stashed the kayaks on the roof. The ladder led us to a flat section of the roof, which to our knowledge was the roof of a small storage area attached to the facility. We worked our way to the window and passed our packs through and then climbed through. My buddy managed to cut his leg on a piece of glass, but after some tape and a bandage he was as good as new. The cut, fortunately, was very minor and did not impede our exploring abilities. So we began exploring the facility one floor at a time, starting at the basement. We found a lot of cool stuff like medical equipment, old calendars, uniforms, and even an old bottle of wine, which Buddy cleaned off and uncorked. We explored a couple of floors, being mindful of our flashlights near the windows to keep our presence hidden from security, and we were amazed by the place since there was almost no sign of graffiti. You can ask any urban explorer you know, and they will tell you that finding an abandoned place that hasn't gone through some form of vandalism or been marked by graffiti is an absolute rarity. A couple of times we got spooked by noises we heard and by stuff that we thought we saw. In these situations, though, the mind can play tricks on you. The one real good scare we had was when we were on the 5th floor. We were looking at a uniform we found in a room, and we were commenting on how amazing it was that it was in such good condition after sitting there for so long. Then out of nowhere, Buddy puts his hand over my mouth and makes the sign for me to be quiet. After a minute of silence, we could hear the doors opening and closing in the stairwell, and the voices of people in conversation. "Security," my buddy said. We looked at our surroundings and decided to take cover. Buddy stepped into a supply closet and gently closed the door, and I went to the room just across the hall and hid in the corner right behind the open door. Sure enough, the security guards walked down the hall and briefly shined their flashlights around. We heard them talking about how creepy this place was, and it sounded like one of them was sharing a story about a scary incident that happened to him. We remained in our hiding spots until they passed by again, on their way back out of the building. Buddy and I decided to continue going upstairs, and this is where we found what looked like a nurse's station. None of the other floors had something that looked like this. The area had a curved desk that made a large U shape. We hopped over the desk and found some old documents, some stationery, and some photos that we assumed were from the staff at that time. We thought it was cool and decided to try and get to the roof. After exploring the remaining upper floors and getting the crap scared out of us by one of those skeleton models that you can find in most healthcare facilities, we made it to the roof. I would at this point like to point out that we did not find another nurse's station with a desk like that on any of the upper floors. We made it to the roof and spent some time up there. And since there was no light pollution where we were, we took the opportunity to take some pictures of the stars and tried to find as many constellations as we could. We ate some snacks, drank more of that nasty wine on the roof, and after a while began to feel the effects of tiredness. It was that or the wine, so we decided to head back to the desk at the nurse's station to set up a sleeping bag and get a few hours sleep. We figured that we could be out of sight behind the desk while we took a small rest before making our journey back to the car, where we had the full intention of getting more sleep. We made our way down the stairwell to the nurse's station to set ourselves up for the night. Now, with security being present, Buddy and I each carried a wireless motion sensor in our packs that connected to our phones. We intended to set one down on the floor below us, and one on the floor below that. That way we would get alerts on our phone to warn us of approaching guards if we were in the middle of a nap. This would give us time to get up and hide before they made it onto our floor. We grab our sensors and pair them to our phones and start towards the stairwell to set them up for the night. Now at this point in the story, I want to remind everyone that the floor we were on was the only one that had a nurse's station with a desk like that for the entire building. We are 100% certain of this, because we had now explored the entire thing. And this is where it gets confusing and downright scary. We open the door to the stairwell and head down to the next floor, making casual conversation as we walk. I open the door for Buddy and let him through onto the floor where we would install the first sensor. As we walk, I am fidgeting with the settings on the app, so that if the alarm does get triggered, it won't make an audible noise on the sensor's end. While messaging with the app, Buddy lets out, Deacon? What the hell's that?" What Buddy actually said was more colourful and included a variety of curse words. That's when I look up from my phone. and inserted my own list of curses into the mix. We were looking at the same nurse's station and the same desk as we were on the floor above us. Thinking we must have missed it, I told Buddy we should go down another floor and set the sensor first. We made our way down the stairwell and opened the door. We stepped out and began to walk forward, and couldn't believe our eyes. The same desk and nurse's station were there again. Buddy looks over to me and says with a shaky voice, "There's no damn way we missed 2 of these. 1, sure, maybe, but 2, no. Let's go up 3 floors because I'm damn sure there is no station or desk up there." I told him to stop being a baby and that I would hold his hand upstairs. Buddy froze for a moment, and after a few quiet and tense moments we began to laugh and walk towards the stairwell. Well, 3 floors up, we made sure to count each one. We opened the door and stepped out, only to again encounter the nurse's station and the particular desk. "Nope. No, sir," said Buddy in a panic. "Let's get the hell out of here, bro." We stuffed our sensors back into our packs and made our way down the stairs to the 2nd floor when we climbed in through the window. We opened the floor and nearly defecated ourselves. There was a nurse's station and the desk again. We turned back to the stairwell and followed it down until there were no more stairs to go down. We opened the door to our absolute relief and saw a familiar passage that led to the basement storage area. We went up 1 floor, slowly cracked the door open, and navigated our way through the floor and found the main entrance that had been boarded up. Everything looked normal and unchanged since our first pass through this floor. That means we had to go up 1 more floor and find the room with the broken window. We went back to the stairwell and up 1 floor and made our way to the room, thankful that we did not see the nurse's station or desk again, and found the window and was so relieved to feel the cool air coming through the broken window. We climbed out and made our way to the ladder. I dropped down first and had Buddy pass me the kayaks that we stashed on the roof. We made our way out of the hole in the fence and back down the path towards the train tracks, being ever careful to not get spotted by the guards. When we made it to the train tracks, we were so amped up on adrenaline that we jogged down the train tracks until we felt like our legs were going to collapse, and then we walked the rest of the way to the lake. After inflating our kayaks and making our way to the car, we shoved all our gear inside, got in it, and locked the door. "What the hell was all that?" Buddy said. "How is that even possible?" I responded. We tried to rationalize our experience for over an hour before exhaustion took a hold of us. I'm not sure if we decided to flat out refuse the reality of what happened to us, or if we were just lying to ourselves to make ourselves feel better. But we concluded that after drinking the old wine we found, we imagined being trapped in a loop on the same floor. Has this type of phenomenon ever happened to anyone else? What causes it? And what on earth can people do to get out of it? One thing is for sure. On our next exploration, we plan on bringing tape to mark the doors and hallways we've been through. That way we can follow the trail of tape out and keep our focus on something we can be certain about. Nothing is scarier than feeling like you're stuck in an endless loop, and no matter what you do, you wind up exactly where you began. It can easily make a person go insane. Back in college, my friends and I got into the habit of exploring abandoned buildings. We've seen some incredible places and have gotten some pretty cool souvenirs. I don't really condone taking stuff from some buildings, but if it's about to be torn down and contractors have taken everything out they deem to be worthy, then I'll gladly take that depression glass they left behind, but I digress. It's a small group of friends that goes exploring with me, and I love introducing new people to it. A friend of mine had asked me on several occasions if I could take him somewhere because he never went exploring before, and decided to take him to an old paper factory that didn't have much inside, but had an absolutely beautiful view of the city from the roof. It was also incredibly easy to get in and out of. We went with a few other people, but two of my friends decided to wait outside for us, since they had been to the building plenty of times and no longer found it interesting. Which isn't unusual. A lot of people use the building to smoke, drink or paint in, and we asked if there were many people inside. They said they thought it was mostly empty, but had heard someone banging around a few floors up, and that startled them. They said he sounded angry, and that perhaps we should avoid the roof. Since we weren't there to drink anything, the roof was our only real goal, and we decided we'd take our chances and head up. After all, it's a massive building, and we didn't think we would run into the guy. We walk up 10 flights of stairs and then climb the ladder to the roof. My friend is impressed, and the view is awesome. As we were about to head back down, my friend waiting on the street calls us. He said a man had passed out in the street, and two of them pulled him out of the way of traffic and called an ambulance for him. They suggest we waited out on the roof to avoid exiting the building while the cops are around, as neither of us could afford the $5,000 fine or 2 weeks in jail time for looking at the city in an abandoned building. We wait, but we probably shouldn't have waited on the roof. We get the all clear from my friend to come back down, and we head to the ladder. My friend goes first, and then our flashlight dies. The ladder is tricky to get onto when you can't see it, and it's missing some rungs, so I come down it very slowly in the dark, afraid of hurting myself. I hop down and my friend tells me very quietly that he hears someone in the room next to us. I shrug it off. We already knew people were in the building. And that's when the screaming starts. At first, it almost sounds like one of my friends who waited outside was yelling my name. I hesitate at the top of the stairs. Just outside the door to the room, the screaming is coming from. Trying to decide if it's him, and if he's playing some sort of prank, the guy I came into the building with grabs my wrist and we start running down the stairs. At this point it's obvious it's not my friend, and it's just guttural, intense screaming. We start running down the stairs and then hear really loud bangs to go with the screams. It sounds like this guy had a very heavy object that he was swinging at the walls and exposed pipes with. There's only one flight of stairs because every other way is down, and out of order freight elevators. So we are trapped in this stairwell, and it's 10 flights till we reach the ground floor, and have to book it in the opposite side of this factory and back out the hole we climbed through. Besides screaming and swinging that heavy object, we hear him barreling down the stairs behind us, but he is at least 1 floor behind. Whatever he is using to hit the walls and pipes with is clearly enough to do some damage to our skulls, because a bit of brick chipped off the wall and followed us down the steps. And that's when my friend grabbed my wrist again and throws me through the nearest door. We only made it down 3 floors, and at the beginning of each flight of stairs there was one door that opened onto the entire level. In other words, it's painfully obvious where we've gone. After flying into this room, we notice it had been gutted like every other floor, but more of the windows are boarded up and it's very dark. All that's in this room to hide behind is some pillars. We get behind one and huddle together. This guy stops outside the doorway to the room, and he's still screaming. It's terrifying. Then he starts swinging his weapon around and slamming it into the doorframe. We're sure he's going to come in, and the only way out is the door he's currently standing at. Neither of us even dare to look round the pillar, as we have no idea what weapon he's wielding. Nearly 4 minutes pass, and his screaming hadn't subsided. For whatever reason, he doesn't come into the room we're in, but starts running down the stairs. We can hear him hitting pipes and smacking the wall, and we just wait. We have 7 floors to go down, and we could pass him in any doorway on the way down. Eventually, the screamings and bangings stop, but we still think we should wait. That's when we hear something from a different corner of the room. There is just enough light from a window in the back that hasn't been boarded up, and we see a figure get up off the floor. This person had been in the room with us the entire 7 or 8 minutes, and who is in front of the only light source, so all we see is a totally black figure. They now begin shuffling towards us without making a sound. It is exactly like a zombie movie, and we run. We don't bother to find out what this person's deal is, and temporarily forget about the clearly dangerous first guy. For an asthmatic, I ran down those stairs and never paused to catch my breath, once. As we were reaching the bottom, the screaming started again, coming from the room next to us, but we didn't stop running. The hole in the wall that we climbed through to get into the building is yards away, and this man comes crashing out of the room behind us. We never look back, and climbed through the hole so fast I don't even remember doing it. Our 2 friends are waiting for us, and we throw ourselves into the car. They ask what happened, because apparently that man was so loud they could hear him screaming and breaking things from outside. They thought we were making all that noise, and were going to give it a few minutes before calling us to remind us that the police were still patrolling the area for drunk, underage college students, and we should probably shut up. We tell them what happened and decide to carry on with our plans for the night, because a beer was totally necessary after that. When I was about 12 to 14 years old, we moved to Cherry Point, North Carolina, because my dad was in the military. I loved exploring woods and finding every little hidden area. Well, after about a year of living there, I had just about learned where every beachfront, woodland area, and park was worth hanging out at. One day, my friend Jake and I were heading to a wooded area to just hang out, climb some trees, and just do regular teenage boy stuff. We decided to take a different route because we hadn't gone that way before, and like I said, I enjoyed exploring. I was and always have been very curious and adventurous when it comes to that sort of thing. Anyway, on our way to the woods we saw a big open field with one single building in the center of it. Now this area had many buildings, military complexes, and as such, but this building was different. It was all alone and clearly run down, so being bored teens we decided to park our bikes and walk through the fields to the 1-story brick building. As we got closer, I noticed that the building seemed to be in such good shape, and I didn't know why someone would just abandon it like they did. The building was a rectangular shape, and a door at the end of each of the 4 corners. On either side of each door were huge glass windows about the same size as the door. We peered through the first window we came to, and we could see the trees in the background as we looked into one window and out the other, on the other side of the building. The building didn't give me any weird vibes until I looked side to side in the windows. That's when I noticed it was an empty hallway with so many closed doors. Even though it was bright out, it was just so dark in the halls, except from the light from the windows on either side. Me and my buddy started checking the doorknobs because that's what teenagers do. We checked the doorknobs and of course it was locked. We moved the second door and windows, where we then proceeded to check the door, and we confirmed it wasn't going to budge. We pressed both our hands and faces on the big windows on either side of the door, and that's when I saw it. The window was cold, much, much colder than the last window. There was one last door at the very right back of the building, and at the end of the hall we could see movement from inside the room. I didn't understand why someone would be in here. There were no vehicles around it and no lights on the building. The movement was so fast and blurred that I half thought I was just seeing things, and didn't mention it to my friend. not wanting to essentially try to turn this into a fake-ass ghost hunt. Besides, he probably wouldn't have believed me anyway. But anyway, for some reason there was a faint glow coming from within the room. It looked like sunlight from a window inside it, but not as bright as it should have been, as the window in question, almost as if it were covered in dirt or a cloth. But it wasn't the weird part. Me and my friend looked at each other and said how cool and wished we could get in. I suggested excitedly that we should check the other 2 doors on the other side of the building and that perhaps we'd get lucky. I had started to make my way around the building to get to the other door when my friend slowly yelled something. I asked what it was, thinking he must have seen an animal or some interesting object. I turned to look at him, but he never said anything and never took his face off the window. So that's when I came over slightly annoyed, and he didn't speak up. I pressed my face up against the window like, great, now I've got to try and guess what small detail he's talking about, and peered into the window and rescanned everything. And then my focus went into the room in the back, with the cracked door, and I could feel my whole body go numb. In the cracked door of the room, I saw what appeared to be a small child with dirty, matted, pitch-black hair, wearing an evening gown. I was stunned she wasn't moving, and I stared hard, not really knowing how to handle this. At first, I thought my brain was playing tricks on me, and it was probably a chair with a coat on it or something, perhaps a mannequin. So without saying what I see to my friend, I ask him, "What are you looking at right now?" "There's a girl in the room staring at me." That's when the figure went out of sight almost instantly, as if she was burning the image into our eyes. Now I was excited, and I turned to Jake and said, "Dude, there's no way, let's go." So I took out my trusty Swiss Army knife, and we walked around the other side of the building to peer into the window. It was closest to where we had seen the girl. Now, I still don't believe I had actually seen her, and if it was some sort of paranormal being, we wouldn't be lucky enough to get any more excitement than a glimpse. It's about a 10-second walk around the building, and in that time I thought hard. And when it actually hit me, what just happened? And we both stopped talking and got really scared the closer we got, because the more I thought about it, the more I knew for a fact I had seen her. Why was I trying to make excuses for it? I know what I saw. We turned the corner, and this time we didn't press our faces to the glass until we noticed that the cracked door that we were looking at from the other side was closed, and all the doors were closed too. Stupidly, I started knocking on the glass, saying things like, "Ma'am, are your parents home?" in a joking manner, because I guess at that point I was no longer scared. Perhaps if I didn't show fear, maybe someone real would show up anyway. But of course there was no answer. All I heard were the echoes from my knocks. We tried the door, of course, and there was nothing, so we went over to the last door. The windows besides the door were broken and had a thin layer of plywood over them. We tried the door, and right as I turned it I got really excited and very scared, because I had turned the doorknob around further than any other of the knobs went, and I could tell the knob was turning all the way. I looked back at Jake, who was a few feet behind me, telling me we should just go home, as he stared blankly at the doorknob. As I turned away from Jake, my plan was to open the door fast and then pull the hell back. But oh man, when we turned back toward the door, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a feature that hadn't been there before. So I looked up out of the plywood on the right of the door where the window should have been, and on the top right corner there was a gap between the board and the building. 4 pale, white, dirty long thin fingers were visible. I jumped the hell back and screamed. That's when the fingers vanished, and we bolted and started dead sprinting for the bikes. That's when I got mad. I was mad and scared, and started to yell and scream. I couldn't stop shaking. I had to run, and I started to cry. I had never cried in front of anyone but my parents, But I didn't care though. I was so scared. Just what the hell was that? A homeless man? A little girl? Or something inhuman? When we got back to my house, I told my mum I had to talk to her, and she knew something was up because she commented on how pale and shaky I was. My friend went home to tell his mum, and I went with my mum into her room, started bawling my eyes out and telling her bits and pieces of the story, obviously leaving out the parts about checking the doorknobs and slightly taunting whatever the hell that was. After plenty of tears, snot, and praying, I went to play the Wii in the living room while my mother called the police. Now this is the interesting part. The police told her there was a house built there during the American Civil War. A family lived there, a husband, wife, and their 2 daughters of a young age. Their father had gone to fight for the Confederacy while leaving his family behind. Apparently there was a fire one night and the mother told the children to run to the ocean. Remember, we were on our way to the same beach when we passed the place. While the mother tried to save some personal belongings, she didn't escape the flames and was burnt alive. Her children reportedly drowned. I don't know what happened to the father. I'm assuming he was either killed in action or when he came back was met with the horror. I don't feel like there's more to the story. This is classic horror stuff, but I mean, who looks at a burnt-up building and says, okay, let's build on that? I never went back to the building, but I did go back to the beach area a few times, and I swear I went down there once on a sunny day all alone because none of my friends were free, and it was too nice to pass. As I lay on the beach, everything was perfect, so I relaxed, almost to the point of sleep, when I heard wild splashing and cracking water. It sounded like a shark had just swum up and grabbed a bird. I shot up and looked around, but the water was calm, barely any waves at all. I got so weirded out, and I just couldn't stop thinking about the building and the kids, that I packed up all my things and just went home. A couple of years ago, I met this guy at a party, who told my friends and I about an abandoned house that he used to explore and take a lot of pictures in. We asked him to take us there one night so that we could explore, and although he seemed a bit hesitant, he agreed, and we made plans. A few nights later, they picked me up, and this guy directs us to the house. Turns out, it's behind a field on a street that I've lived about 10 minutes from my whole life. On our way there, he quickly tells us the story behind it. Decades ago, probably in the early 1900s, the house was an orphanage run by a priest. The priest started acting weirdly, and someone decided to send an exorcist to check the place out. The exorcist sensed that the evil spirits were coming out of their well, so they sealed it and built a new one. Not long after that, the priest killed the children and then himself in the house, and it has since been abandoned. While this story definitely creeped me out a little, I was skeptical. I wasn't too sure that I believed in evil spirits or possession or anything of the sort. We finally get there after having a lot of trouble trying to find the mostly hidden gravel road, because the field was pretty overgrown. We drive down the road, and I'm feeling a little creeped out, especially once we get to the clearing and the house becomes visible. The property consisted of a house with a small shed on one side and a decent-sized barn on the other. The guy tells us that the shed and barn are pretty run down inside, so it wouldn't be safe to explore so much, and decided that we should stick to the house. As we walked into the woods and closer to the house, he gets visibly anxious and quieter. We make our way inside, and we get to the front room when he tells us his story. He and his friend had gone there the last time a few months ago, and were smoking in the exact spot that we were in, when he said he saw a shadowy figure coming out of the room to our right that was full of black mold. He claims the figure chased him and his friend out of the house and down the road until they had safely driven away. He tells us That's why he's so anxious, and understandably so. We still decide to explore further. As we make our way upstairs, I stop feeling so uneasy and start having fun exploring. It's definitely still creepy, but I haven't had any bad feelings or seen or heard anything strange so far. We get down to the basement, and the kid tells us this is where he feels the most uneasy. As soon as we enter one of the rooms, the darkest one, he suggests we turn off our flashlight and sit there to see if we see anything. I go over and sit under the stairs, and as soon as I turn off our lights, I feel the strongest sense of dread I've ever felt, and suddenly my shoulders feel heavy. It feels as if something, or someone, is sitting on them. I freeze for a second, and then turn on my flashlight and demand everyone do the same. I tell them what I felt, and everyone is pretty silent. My friend chimes in and says she's not feeling too great, so we decide to leave. We get to the car, and the guy and I stand outside to smoke a cigarette, while the rest of the group waits in the car. We smoke in silence, and I'm looking back at the abandoned buildings when I notice a light that appears to be coming from the second floor window of the barn. Without noticing, I start walking towards it. It felt as if something was pulling me there. The guy sees me doing it, and then grabs me and pulls me back. He tells me he knows what I'm feeling and that he felt the same the first time he went, and he told me he felt the strongest of urges to go back there for days afterwards, and he did. He went back as often as he could, until the incident with the shadow figure. After we finished our cigarettes, we get into the car. We drive all the way back to my house in silence, and I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night, and for days after. I kept feeling the same way. I had the strongest urge to return, but I didn't. Every night for at least a week after, I felt I wasn't alone. Then I got sick. Sore throat, a cold, but a really bad one. I even lost my voice for a few days. Then my mental health began to decline. I was always angry and felt depressed. I had a history of mental health issues and hospitalization, but I had been doing really well for the past year or so. No more than 2 weeks after my trip to the house, things got really bad, and I checked myself into the hospital and stayed there for 2 weeks. Ever since then, whenever I pass the spot where I know the house is, I feel the slightest urge to just turn into the gravel road and return. Of course, I will never do that, and no, I will never go back there. Back in high school, a couple of my friends and I were bored one summer night and looking for something to do in my friend's neighborhood, other than the usual, which was get high. There was this abandoned house at the end of the main street. We'd heard all kinds of stories as to why it had been abandoned, from creepy to financial problems. So being a bunch of little rebels, we decided to break in through the boarded-up bathroom window in the back of the house. As soon as we crawled in, there was tons of broken glass all over the bathroom, from the window being shattered from previous vandals, and old newspapers from previous tenants, and personal belongings everywhere. There were 7 of us there, including myself, and 2 girls. Keep in mind we're all high, but not to the point where we're delusional. So we're all scattered through the house, rummaging around looking for anything of value. I was walking around, shifting through things that were left behind, trying to figure out why it looked like some of the previous owners just left everything. As I was walking back towards one of the rooms, I took a glance towards the kitchen and saw 2 of my friends at the dining room table. One was a girl, with their flashlight inspecting what was on it. I was in the process of turning back around to head into the room, when I saw what I thought at the time was one of the girls just standing at the kitchen sink, perfectly still staring at it. I stood there for a moment, looking at her, thinking she must be really high, and laughed to myself a little and proceeded to head into the room to do a little more exploring. When I was done exploring the room, I came back out and my friends were still at the table just conversing about their findings, but the girl by the sink was gone. So I walked up to them and joined them in on the conversation, thinking nothing more of the matter. The other girl we were there with came out of the garage with the rest of my guy friends, and then it hit me. So I asked the girl that came out the garage why she was standing at the kitchen sink just staring at it. She then denied it, said she hadn't been, but had been in the garage the whole time. At this point I was freaking out and stated to everyone, well, who the hell did I see in the kitchen a little while ago? They all expressed that nobody had been in the kitchen or at the sink. So after I said that, we all got the hell out of there. And I made sure that I wasn't the last one out. After all that, none of us have returned since. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed tonight's video. My voice is going a bit croaky after that 47-minute narration. I do hope you enjoyed tonight's stories. I was actually planning on doing 10, but I hit 47 minutes after 5 and thought I better leave it at that, with my voice at the state it's in. I hope you guys liked the video. I certainly enjoyed it. I really like these Urbex stories, as you all well know by now. And who knows, maybe we'll have another one soon enough. If there are any stories that you would like me to narrate, you can send it to my email or my Reddit page. Link to both can be found in the description. And I'd like to extend a special thank you to everyone who wished us well for the birth of our daughter. It really means a lot. Friday the 13th. Had to be Friday the 13th. She was literally born at 7 minutes past as well. So, she could have been earlier. She could have been the day before, but nope. Anyway, and a huge thanks to all the lovely members and patrons for your continued support and contributions. Alright then guys, for now I think I'm going to sign off before my throat explodes. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.